Today we are going to classify quadrilaterals, and the definition is given right below that title there. It says quadrilaterals are polygons. So polygons means many different angles. And these quadrilaterals have four sides, and that's where the prefix quad comes in. So when you see that prefix, you always think of four. So it has four sides, and also in a figure below, arrows are used to indicate parallel sides, and tick marks are used to indicate congruent sides. So congruent means equal, parallel. These little arrows are signifying parallel. So from quadrilaterals, we have specific types, and they're all ones with parallel sides. Now, a parallelogram has two sets of parallel sides. So you see these arrows? These two arrows here signify that these two arrows signify that these two sides are parallel. And then the one arrow signifies that we have a different set of sides that are parallel. So from parallelograms, we have three other types of special quadrilaterals. We have a square, and a square is a special type of quadrilateral in that, a special type of parallelogram. It's also a rectangle. So it's a rectangle with all sides that are the same. That's what these little tick marks are for. The right angle symbol, right there, that little box means that this is a 90-degree angle. And so again, the parallel sides with the arrows. Here's a rectangle. A rectangle is a special type of parallelogram again. We've got the parallel sides, but we've also got congruent angles. So all angles are exactly the same. Well, we have a rhombus. A rhombus is a parallelogram with four sides that are congruent. So another parallelogram, but all sides are congruent. They're all the same. And then we have a different type. We have a trapezoid, which only has one set of parallel sides. Hence, the only set of arrows is just the one here. So those are the special type of quadrilaterals. So now what we get to do is we get to give the name that applies to each of these quadrilaterals. So we get to describe it using as many different terms as we can. We know they're all quadrilaterals, so we don't need to rewrite that word, but we can rewrite whether they're parallelograms, squares, rectangles, rhombuses, or trapezoids. So let's take a look at our first one. Oh, and then afterwards we'll use a comma to separate it, and then we'll describe the one that best describes it. And so we'll start with this. So notice that all angles are the same, and we also have that these two sides are parallel, and these two sides are parallel. And notice also that we have angle marks. So these little tick marks represent that these two sides are congruent, which along with these two sides are congruent. So what we have to start with is a parallelogram. So parallelogram is the first thing that we have here. We also can call this a rectangle. Now, I cannot call it a rhombus because not all the sides are the same. Notice that this one has two tick marks and this one has one. That means the sides are different. Therefore, we can't also call it a square. We cannot call it a square because not all sides are the same. And it's not a trapezoid because a trapezoid only has one pair of parallel sides. So those are the two different things they are. We have parallelogram and a rectangle. Which best describes it? Well, a rectangle would best describe it. So whichever one is more clear. So rectangle is more clear than a parallelogram because we're saying that all angles are the same. Well, this one we would call a parallelogram. And we know it's a parallelogram because we see that the sides are going the same direction. Now, it doesn't have the little markings saying that it's a parallelogram. Along with this one did not either, but because these sides are the same, that must mean it's a rhombus. Now, we cannot determine whether it's a square or not because it doesn't have the right angle symbols. It doesn't even look like one. It looks like these are smaller than 90 and these are bigger. So we can call it a parallelogram and a rhombus. Now, which one would best describe it? Well, that would be a rhombus. Well, a parallelogram would describe it, but it wouldn't tell us that all sides are the same. So saying that it's a rhombus tells us that it's a parallelogram and all sides are the same. Well, this one doesn't have any markings either, but we'll take it that these two sides are going the same direction. These two sides look like they're not going the same direction. But since it has this one set of parallel sides, we're going to call this a trapezoid. And since I cannot say that it's anything other than a trapezoid, What best describes it? Well, that's a trapezoid. Looking at the next one, this one is a parallelogram because we also can call this a square, a rectangle, and even a rhombus. This one has lots of names. And so I know it's a parallelogram, even though it doesn't have those arrows signifying that the lines are parallel, but it has the right angle, so it has to be a parallelogram. Anything that has all right angles has to be either a rectangle or a square, but then also it has to be a parallelogram. So we can call it a parallelogram. We can also call this a rectangle. And since it's a rectangle and it has all four sides are the same, we can also call it a square, and we can call it a rhombus. So it's got lots of names. It's a rhombus because we have a parallelogram with all sides are the same. But which best describes it? Well, a rhombus wouldn't tell us that it has the right angle symbols. A rectangle wouldn't tell us that all sides are the same. And a parallelogram doesn't tell us any of that information. But a square would tell us that it's a parallelogram, first of all. It has all sides are the same and all angles are the same. Well, this next one, we'll say that these two sides are parallel, but that's it, just one set of parallel sides. So we'll call that a trapezoid again. And since there is nothing other than a trapezoid, we can call this, it's not a parallelogram because it only has one set of parallel sides. The best name for it is a trapezoid. Well, this one we could say that these two sides are going the same direction and these two sides over here are going the same direction. So I would just call this a parallelogram. But I can't get any more specific than that because I don't know about any of the sides being the same. It doesn't have tick marks on the sides that are opposite that say that it is either a rectangle. It doesn't have the angle marking showing that these are right angles. So I don't know anything else except that this is a parallelogram. So that is one set of directions you're going to have. Another set will say, draw each figure. If it is not possible to draw the figure, we have to explain why. So a rhombus that is not a rectangle. Well, look at what a rhombus looks like right here. A rhombus doesn't need to have the right angle symbols. Now, a rhombus that is a rectangle, we would call a square, because a square has all 90-degree angles, so it's a special type of rectangle, but it also has all sides are the same. So to draw that, what I would do is maybe go over a couple spaces this way and then down a few this way, a couple spaces over this way, and down a few this way. So, and then just mark that these are all the same. So all these sides are the same, and it's a parallelogram. So that's what the figure looks like. So yes, this does end up working. Now we have a trapezoid, and a trapezoid that is also a square. Well, a trapezoid that's also a square would end up looking like this. We've got, well, let's see if we can do it first of all. So a trapezoid only has one set of parallel sides. Well, a square? Oh, well, a square has two sets of parallel sides because a square is also a rectangle. And so, since a square is a parallelogram, a square is a parallelogram, so a square is a parallelogram, and notice that it's a special type of parallelogram. It's a rectangle. A rectangle has right angles, so all angles are the same, and a square is a special rectangle with all sides are the same. So a square is a parallelogram which has two sides, two sets of parallel sides. Well, let's look at the definition of a trapezoid. A trapezoid has only, and this is the key, and I underlined that over here, only one set of parallel sides. So what we would say is, since a square is a parallelogram which has two sets of parallel sides, a trapezoid has only one set of parallel sides, we'll say it is impossible to draw. So there it is. So again, remembering these different types of special quadrilaterals, we have parallelograms, squares, rectangles, rhombuses, and trapezoids. Remember that the first four I named off have two sets of parallel sides, where a trapezoid only has one. Good luck on tonight's assignment.